quick experiment for you. Grab a broomstick, or you can use it as a thought experiment. If you take a broomstick and you balance it in the palm of your hand, just as a concept, at first it seems simple, but then the broom begins leaning to one side. Without thinking, your hand moves underneath it. The broom starts falling faster. Your hand speeds up. It begins drifting too far the other way. You correct again. You aren't making one decision. You're making hundreds. Every second, your eyes constantly measure the angle. Your brain compares where the broom is with where it should be. Your muscles make tiny corrections before the error becomes too large. You never stop adjusting. Living creatures survive because they can do this. Every bird in flight, every fish in a river, every child learning to ride a bike. Intelligence is more than knowing. It's constantly deciding what to do next. For thousands of years, humanity wondered whether machines could ever do the same. During the 20th century, ships were becoming larger and faster and far more difficult to control. An experienced helmsman rarely held the wheel perfectly still. And if you watch them closely, you'll notice something interesting. The ship drifts slightly off course, and a small correction's made. The wave pushes it again. Another correction. Too much steering, and the ship begins weaving back and forth across the water. Too little, and it slowly wanders off course. Russian-American engineer Nicolas Minorsky spent years studying experienced helmsmen. What fascinated him was how they corrected mistakes. He realized they were solving 3 different problems at the same time. First, how far am I from where I want to be? Second, how quickly is the error getting worse? And third, has this small error been quietly building for a long time? Those 3 questions became one of engineering's most influential control systems. Today, we know it as a PID controller, a PID controller. P stands for proportional. How large is the error right now? If the broomstick that you had leans a little, you might have a small correction. If it leans a lot, you move your hand much farther. And that correction, the size of that correction, is proportional to the size of the error. I stands for integral. Has the error been quietly accumulating over time? If your home thermostat is 1 degree too cold for several hours, eventually the heating system, it's got to work a little harder because that small error has continued building. And D stands for derivative. How quickly is the error changing? If the broom suddenly begins falling much faster, you don't wait. You react immediately because the rate of change tells you a larger correction is about to become necessary. And together, these 3 ideas allow machines to make smooth, continuous corrections instead of violent overreactions. Today, PID controllers guide aircraft through turbulence. They keep chemical plants stable. They aim telescopes toward distant galaxies. They control industrial robots precisely. Even many home heating systems depend upon the same principle. But most people, your average person, probably has never heard of a PID control. But they help keep the modern world running. Now imagine standing inside a General Motors factory in 1961. The air is hot and machines thunder around you. Nearby, molten metal pours into casting. And at temperatures that could cause you some serious catastrophic injuries in an instant as they mold the casts. Someone has to remove those glowing parts again and again and again, hour after hour. Seems like an unsafe practice. Need to get health and safety involved. An American inventor, George Devol, looked at jobs like these and asked a different question. Why are we asking people to perform the most dangerous work when a machine could do it instead. He wasn't trying to make a machine that thought. He wasn't going elaborate with any designs. He just wanted something that would do the job and never got tired, never lost concentration, never reached into molten steel a fraction of a second too early. His programmable mechanical arm attracted the attention of another guy, an entrepreneur named Joseph Engelberger. Engelberger immediately understood what Devol had built. It was a completely new kind of worker, not just a machine. And together, they founded Unimation. Their robot became known as Unimate. Installed at a General Motors plant, Unimate repeatedly lifted heavy pieces of red-hot die-cast metal from manufacturing equipment and placed them safely onto conveyor belts. It performed that same movement thousands of times with consistency that people just couldn't match. The robot was removing human beings from being one of the most dangerous positions, or from holding one of the most dangerous positions in the factory. And at that moment, industrial robotics had begun. And to be fair, early robots were impressive, but they were also stubborn. Everything had to be exactly where engineers expected. If you moved a conveyor belt a few inches away, the robot would completely miss the part. If you rotated a part, the robot would fail. Reality itself refused to cooperate. Factories don't remain perfect because parts vary and machines wear down. People walk into workspaces. And the world that they exist in, it changes constantly because the world all around us changes constantly. So engineers asked yet another question. Could a robot respond to change instead of merely repeating instructions? Companies such as Fanuc, ABB, and Kuka began equipping robots with cameras, force sensors, laser scanners, and increasingly more and more state-of-the-art control systems. Instead of assuming everything was exactly where it should be, the robot measured and compared and adjusted and measured again. And the decision was made continuously, just like balancing our broomstick. Oh, okay, here we go. Try this one. Now, I want you to imagine, maybe you've done this before, maybe you've owned a dog and you want to play fetch with it. Well, if you're going to do that, they don't generally know all of the rules that you want them to do on their own. You have to teach them. And so I want you to imagine teaching a dog to play fetch. Your first attempt at it basically never works well. It could be the dog chases the ball. Maybe. Perhaps it gets the ball and runs away with it. Maybe it goes after a stick or a squirrel or gets distracted. Or maybe it just looks at you kind of and lays down in the grass. You can't hand a dog a manual. You have to encourage success while ignoring mistakes. And then little by little, the behavior changes. Eventually, it will learn to go after what you've thrown and come back with it. Researchers Richard Sutton and Andrew Barto realized machines could learn in kind of the same way. Instead of programming every possible decision, they allow the machine to explore. And they reward useful choices, and they discourage unsuccessful ones. And then they repeat that process thousands and then millions of times. And that approach became known as reinforcement learning. Rather than memorizing the correct answer, the machine discovers which actions consistently produce better outcomes. And over time, successful decisions become more likely. Poor decisions become less common. The machine learns through consequences. And that same approach has taught robots to balance on two legs, walk over uneven ground, manipulate unfamiliar objects, and master games whose possibilities exceed anything humans could ever calculate directly. Experience itself becomes the teacher. Decision-making becomes most interesting when there isn't a perfect answer. If you were driving through a heavy rain You know that the visibility through windshield, it drops. Sometimes you can't see anything. The road itself is slick, and then suddenly a child runs towards the street. You don't have time to calculate every possibility, but somehow you make a choice. Engineers building autonomous machines face similar problems every day. Should the robot move around the obstacle? Should it wait? Should it ask for help? Should it try another path? Unlike a factory, the real world doesn't always provide clear instructions. Every decision involves uncertainty, and every uncertainty carries consequences. Teaching a machine to decide is more than programming. It becomes a question of judgment, when humanity is still learning to answer itself. And by now, humanity had built machines that could move, machines that amplified our strength, machines that followed instructions, machines that perceived the world, and machines that learned from experience. And now they've created machines that could make decisions. Yet, even our greatest accomplishments shared one limitation. Most of them worked alone, whereas living systems, they rarely do. Bees build colonies. Birds migrate together. Ants accomplish feats impossible for any individual ant to do. Human civilization itself exists because billions of people cooperate. What happens when intelligent machines begin doing the same? Not just one robot, or two, but thousands, or millions, all sharing information, sharing experience, learning from one another. That story begins next time. I'm Nomadic IT, and as always, I hope this helps.